Unit tests are normally very quick to execute because it's plain Java code that does not communicate over the network with any remote server or a database. Unit tests do not send HTTP requests and they do not wait for HTTP response, and this is why unit tests are very quick, and you can create and run many unit tests and they can all execute each time you add more code to your project and each time you build your project to make sure that your code works and you have not broken any other code which has been written earlier by you or other people. But when you make your unit tests connect to a real database, or when you make a unit test to communicate with external API or a web service, then it will take a little bit longer for this unit test to complete. And in this case, actually, it's no longer called unit test, but rather an integration test. And in my previous videos, I was showing you how to create a unit test rather than integration test. And I have noticed that one of the test methods takes a very long time to execute. Let's run, for example, our test create user method and have a look at how long does it take for this method to complete. Have a look at the test get user method. It took only 0.8 seconds. The test create user took almost 4 seconds. And then test get user username on found exception took even less, 0.012 seconds. So the test create user method takes almost 4 seconds, which is not normal. So let's have a look at our code, for example. So when we call create user method, let me open its implementation. That create user method eventually creates a new instance of Amazon SimpleML service, and then it calls verify email. So this function verify email actually uses Amazon SimpleML service SDK to send HTTP request to Amazon Cloud so that that system can send an email message, and then it waits for Amazon SimpleML service to respond. And this is why execution of this test case takes much longer. So let's fix this, because we are not working on integration test at this moment, but we are working on unit test. So first of all, while in user service implementation class, I want to make my Amazon SimpleML service an auto-wired bean or service. So what I will do, I will delete this and I will call it Amazon SimpleML service. Now I will need to create an object that is called Amazon SimpleML service. So I'll scroll up here and I will auto-wire this object as I did auto-wired user repository and utility class and others. So I will use auto-wired and then Amazon SimpleML service like this. So now I will have Amazon SimpleML service auto-wired and injected into my user service implementation. Let's just double check that the name is correct, Amazon SimpleML service. And if I scroll down to create user method, I'm using Amazon SimpleML service. Now for Amazon SimpleML service to be auto-wired, I will need to make this Amazon SimpleML class to be a Spring Bean, just like I did with the utility class. Let's have a look at its implementation. We have added a component annotation to it to make Spring Framework be able to inject this utility class into other objects. And this utility class can actually have a service annotation. It has a business logic which can be related to a service class. Like it's not a repository, definitely. It's not an entity bean, so it could be either component or more likely a service. We can use either of this. So let me change this to service, for example, and I'll take this annotation and I will go back to my user service implementation, open Amazon SimpleML service, and I will annotate this class as a service as well. And if I run the test method, it will fail because at this moment Amazon SimpleML service object is null in our test case. It's not instantiated. And for Amazon SimpleML service not to be null, we will need to mock it, just like we did with user repository with bcrypt password encoder and so on. So I'll scroll up here and I will also mock the Amazon SimpleML service. And now when I have it as a mock object, I can scroll down to my test create user and I can use Makita to instruct it to do nothing when a send email function is called on that object. So I will use my key term and I will use do nothing when a method on a mock object, which is Amazon SimpleML service, is called, and that method is called verify email, and it needs to take an object, user data transfer object, and we can say it can take any user data transfer object class, like this. So now when verify email function is called on Amazon SimpleML service mock object, there is nothing will happen, the function will not execute, and we can test it with our debugger. So let's go into verify email function. I'll put a breakpoint here. I already have one actually. So let's go to a unit test, and now I will debug this unit test and I'll see if this function is even called. Let's actually put one more breakpoint right here, so that we see that we have stopped here at the call to verify email function, and we will step over and see if our debugger does go inside of this verify email function. Okay, so let's debug this unit test. I'll choose debug as unit test. And here we go. So I will go into debugger view, and by the way, we are already at the line that calls verify email function. So I'll simply choose a different perspective, different view, debug view. So we are at this line. So now let's see if we actually can go inside of this verify email function, or we will simply step over to a return value. So I will step over, and here we go. Our debugger did not go inside of verify email function, and we know that because we have a breakpoint here. So this function is not called, it's ignored, because this is a mock object and testing framework helps us to skip this function and keep our unit test as a plain unit test rather than an integration test. So let's resume debugging and switch back to our editor view, and now go to user service test and run this as unit test rather than debugging it as unit test. And here we go, everything is green, the 3 tests have passed, and now have a look at the time. The test get user method was called and it took only 0.7 seconds. Now the test create user now takes 0.03 instead of almost 4 seconds. You see the difference? And this is because that verify email function is no longer called, and the other method takes even less time to execute. Okay, so everything works and we can continue.